Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of the dashcam installation video. So in part 1 I showed you guys how to update the camera and how to prepare the hardwiring kit. So if you guys haven't checked it out, make sure you check it out before you follow this installation. So like usual with all these videos, I just let you guys know I'm not a professional. So I'm just showing you guys how I did my own installation, and you can try to apply the knowledge when you do the installation for yourself. So I'm doing this for a 2017 Honda CR-V, and the process will be kind of similar for many cars with like a little difference in like taking off the panels and stuff like that. So I'm gonna get right into it and show you guys what I have for this installation. So in the car I have the hardwire kit, which we did the connection for in the other video. And then we have the front and the rear dash cam. So here's the rear one, here's the front one. I have this little wedge to help us take panels off. I have this fuse tester because we're going to use it to test which side of the fuse is live and which is not. And then I brought a couple of zip ties that might help us out with our wire tuck and stuff like that. Getting straight into the installation, the fuse panel is right under the steering wheel. So here I'm just showing you where the fuse panel is relative to the driver's seat. So I'm going to take off this fuse panel here, and hopefully it's going to give me more access to the fuse box. So to take this out, I'm just going to pull on it gently and see where the clips undo themselves. So you can see here I'm just being like kind of trying to figure it out myself. Try to pull on the tabs gently and stuff, and eventually just like that they'll come out of place. So same thing for this panel here. I just kind of wiggled it, and you'll kind of figure it out. It's not too hard to take these panels off. So I took off this panel by the door. I took off this panel under here. And this weather stripping we're also going to be taking off. So we have some access and we can run wires down to this crack. In some cars you can take this panel off. If you check Anish's video, you'll see that in his Q50 this panel actually comes off, and you can see that this is where he'll run his wire out and then up into the pillar and across the windshield to dash cam. So in my 2017 CR-V, the interior fuse panel label is under the steering wheel, but if you can't find the label for some reason in your car, you can always check the user manual, and the user manual will usually have a page that shows you what all the fuses are. So here it's very important to note, for safety reasons, we're going to be picking a fuse from the fuse panel here that is not essential. So when I mean non-essential, I mean that we don't want to choose a fuse such as the airbag fuse. So I don't recommend messing with those fuses, because in the case of an emergency you don't want something to go wrong. So for my installation, I'm going to be using the daytime running lights as my accessory fuse. So the fuse that is on only when the car is on. And then I'm going to be using an accessory fuse that is always on even when the car is not on. So I want to show you guys how to test your fuses so that you can see which fuses are on when the car is on and which fuses are on when the car is off. So this metal clip on the fuse tester I'm going to attach to a nut on the car or any exposed metal that's on the car. And then this is the fuse tester, which will tell you if the fuse is on or not. So right now the car is off, and I'm going to test a couple fuses to show you guys how to tell if they're on or off. So you just touch the fuse tester onto the exposed metal part of the fuse. So here I'm testing fuse number 1, and the light in the fuse tester does not turn on, so I know that that fuse is off when the car is off. So just going down the row and testing a few more. The next one is also off. And then you can see that the one after that turns on. So this means that this fuse is on when the car is off. And this is how we're going to choose our fuses for our accessory wire and our battery wire. The daytime running light fuse that I'm going to be using is 6 fuses from the middle from the right. So if I test it now, you can see that the light doesn't turn on. And if I test another fuse, you can see that this fuse does turn on, which means that my daytime running light fuse is only on when the car is on. So here, just to show you guys, while keeping my fuse tester on the daytime running light fuse, then when I turn the car on to accessory mode, the light bulb is on, which means that the fuse is now active. So here, let me turn the car off, and then you can see that the fuse turns off again. So I'm going to be using this fuse for the yellow wire, which is the accessory wire. And I'm going to pull this fuse out right now, and it's very important to make sure that you guys don't lose these fuses. But if you do end up losing the fuse, don't panic. Usually the exterior fuse box will have a couple extra fuses you can use. So I'm going to show you guys where I get my fuse puller, and it might be different for you guys, but I don't see one on the inside, so I'm going to get the one from the outside. So here's the fuse box in my engine bay, and I'm going to open it. And then for the Hondas on the lid, there's one right here, so I'm going to use this one. And this one's a little smaller, so it's going to give me more clearance. I'm going to be using the driver's side power seat. So for me, this fuse is 7 from the top row, and I'm going to test it right now. So here we can see that the fuse is on when the car is off. So I'm going to use this fuse for my constant fuse. So this is also going to be a very important safety step. So we want to find out which side of the fuse is providing the power, because we need our fuse taps to be in a specific orientation so we can prevent a short circuit from happening. So first I'm going to check the fuse that's always on. So you can see if I put the fuse tester on the bottom, it doesn't light up. But as soon as I touch the top side, it does. So for this fuse, we know that the active side is on the top. So once again, I'm gonna have to turn on the car to accessory mode to check my other fuse, because if I check it now, there's no power going to it. So on the top and the bottom, nothing will show up. So now that the car's in accessory mode, when I test it on the top, there's nothing. And when I test it on the bottom, this is where the hot side is. So we're going to keep that in mind when we put in our fuse taps. So something very important about fuse taps that I see people neglect in their video is which way to plug the fuse tap in. I found a really good video explaining which side of the fuse should go to the hot side and why it has to be in this specific orientation. I'm going to link that video down in the description below if you guys want to check it out. But basically with these fuse taps, you want the farthest side from the wire to be the hot side, and then you want the closer side to be the draw end. It's also important to note that you guys have to put the original fuse from the car onto the closer side of the fuse tap, and then the smaller fuse, which is our accessory fuse, on the farther end. The accessory fuse always has to be smaller than the original fuse, so make sure you're not using a fuse that is 2 amps for example, or 5 amps when you're using a 5 amp accessory fuse. From what I can tell, it's the safest if you use a fuse from the car that is anywhere from 10 to 20 amps. So I'm going to start off with the 20 amp fuse that we pulled out, and I'm just going to put this fuse into our fuse tap. The orientation of the fuse shouldn't matter because the fuses are identical on both sides. What's important is just that you guys get the orientation of this fuse tapper correct. Here's our 10 amp fuse tap, and here's our 20 amp fuse tap. So with this 20 amp fuse tap, we want the top of our fuse tap to be at the top of this fuse slot. So we're going to install it this way. And then for our 10 amp fuse tap, we want to install it the opposite way, so the top side on the bottom, because the bottom side is the hot side and where the power is coming from. So just zooming in for you guys a bit, that is what our fuse taps look like. Also, after doing your fuses, don't forget to connect the ground cable to a metal piece on your cars. So for this C-type end, I'm just going to look for a nut on the car that I can use to ground the connection. So what this little box does, I believe, is it cuts off the power from the dash cam to the battery when it detects that the battery is getting low. Recommended by VIOFO, you should set this to 12 volt, which is the second setting. And also recommended by VIOFO, they say that you should turn this to the 4th setting, which is 12.4 volts, when the weather is extremely cold. So here in the car, I want to show you guys how I've already started to wire the dash cam. The first wire is going to be the wire that provides power to the dash cam, which is the Hardwire kit. And then the second wire we're going to have to worry about is the wire that connects the front camera to the rear camera. So starting off with the Hardwire kit, I'm going to be running my dash cam on the front windshield somewhere around here. So I just have a little extra wire. So I've run the wire from the headliner here, and all you have to do is stuff it in or push it in with a pry tool around to the A-pillar. And I'm going to insert the clip here where I took off the A-pillar. And then here is where I started zip tying it very loosely just to guide it down here. And I'm just going to feed it from here down to this crack here. And it's going to come all the way down, and that's how it's going to get to the fuse box. So if you're not comfortable with taking the A-pillar off, or you don't want to go through the trouble, you can also run it through here, and then you can stuff it into the A-pillar here and just run it down the weather stripping to the same location. And this is a pretty popular way of wiring your dash cam. But I personally decided not to do it that way because I thought that if the airbag were to deploy, then it would rip the wire out of the dash cam potentially. So instead, I'm going to run it along the A-pillar behind the airbag so that there's zero chance that the airbag will rip the wire out from the dash cam. Originally, I thought it might be a safety issue, but then after doing some searches online, and I guess using common sense, it's pretty obvious that this wire will not stop this super strong airbag from deploying. So for the connection to the rear dash camera, I decided to run it from here up to the headliner. So you can see here, this wire just goes around this harness and behind the airbag. And then I'm going to run it through the headliner. So here it's going to be dangling down. How we're going to hide that is when we put the weather stripping back up, it should hold the wire up. So with one hand, it's kind of tough to show you how to put the wire through the trim, but it's pretty easy. So once you lift the weather stripping, the sides of the trim are pretty easy to access. And then you just want to slip your wire through. You can use the pry tool to help you out. And then it just goes all the way around. And same thing for the back trim. Just a little warning for you guys, my hands are kind of dirty, so I kind of messed up the headliner here a bit, but when you're doing your install, make sure your hands are completely clean so this doesn't happen to you. Now the wire runs across the top of the car and then it ends up here, so it's pretty much hidden throughout the whole car. Running it this way, you get a lot of extra wire, so I'm probably going to tuck it somewhere into this panel. If you have a sedan, you can just stick the rear dash camera to the window and you'll be fine. But with any hatches or SUVs, normally you want to run it through the headliner and then into this tube to the hatch. But the problem is that this tube, at least on the CR-V, is too thin. So instead, I'm just going to leave enough slack so that the wire can run to the open hatch and not be an issue or like rip the camera out or something. Found a place to hide my wires. I just ran them back and forth and then I rolled them up and stuck them in here. And then here I have just enough wire left so that it can run to the hatch, and there's still some slack just in case. So now I'm going to put the covers back on and I'm going to plug the cameras in and find a place to mount them. So after you make sure you have your ground, accessory, and battery cables connected, so then turn your car on and then your dash cam should be on. And if it's not, then you're probably missing one of 3 cables that you still have to connect. So after it's on, you can find the spot to mount your camera. So this is where you can open the app, or you can open the app after. So the reason why I'm going to open the app after is because I already know that I want my camera to be centered. And for me, on this part, the middle part of the windshield, I can test my wiper blades. And my wiper blades completely clean this spot, so I'm just going to center it. And I'm going to peel off the double-sided tape and mount it. You can wipe it with alcohol wipe to clean it a little more to get the grease and stuff off, but I don't have rubbing alcohol to clean the surface, so I don't think it's a big deal. For me, I'm just going to take a towel and wipe it, and then I'm going to mount it to the center. So I'm sitting in the trunk of the car. I'm going to switch the camera so that we see the rear. So using the windshield wiper, I can see that basically the whole windshield in the center gets clean, so I can mount it right up to the top. And for me, I'm just going to match it to the center all the way up. So upon installing this, I noticed there's a tiny problem, and it's that because this wire is designed on the top, you can't put the dash cam at the top slot, which is not really that big of a deal, but it would be really nice if they could put this connection on the side instead. So for me, the closest I could install it to the top is the 3rd row. So that's where I'm going to stick it, and I'm going to stick it right in the middle. And at this point, the camera angle doesn't matter too much, just that you center it. And then you can fix the angle of both cameras with the app later. So make sure that when you're installing this with the double-sided tape, you don't tape it onto one of these heating wires for the rear windshield, or else you'll probably ruin it. So you can see VIOFO designed it with this in thought, and at least for my application, the mounting pad stays between these lines with a little bit of margin of error in case you mess up. Alright, so let's see if the hatch can open properly. So we can see the hatch opens with no problem, and there's just enough slack with the wire. You can always adjust it by hiding more or letting more wire out. So for the rear dash cam, we're good. So this is where the dash cam is going to be most useful. and you can see the feed of the front and the rear, and then you can adjust the camera here to the amount of clicks you want. And once you're happy with the angle, then you can let the dash cam do its job. So before I put the panels back on the car, last thing I'm going to do is double side tape this with the extra tape they gave us. I'm going to stick this here so that it doesn't rattle around and it's easily accessible when I have to adjust the setting here. So it's getting kind of late and it's kind of dark right now, but I'm going to show you guys quickly what it looks like inside the car. So there's the dash cam, and as you can see, there are no visible wires. So all the way down to the footwell, don't see anything at all. The panels, they're back in place tightly. And then the rear wire runs all the way here, and then all the way to the back. It's dark and you can't see, but trust me when I say that there's no wire showing. And then on the rear camera from the driver view, this is what it looks like. Just a little bit of wire, but it's not obstructing my view. And the front dash cam looks like this at eye level, which is pretty good. And I can also see the buttons and lights on the bottom, so if I need to click them or if I want to see if it's recording, then I'll be able to see it from here. There's a couple air bubbles in the double-sided tape that looks a little ugly from the outside. I probably could have applied that a little better, but again, it's no big deal because you can always just take off the pad and put a new one on. So that's going to be it for my dash cam install. I hope I was able to help you guys out with this video. Again, everything is linked in the description below, so if you want to use those links, it'll help me out by giving me a small commission. I think this video is going to be pretty long, so I'm not going to put any dash cam footage in here, but I'll definitely link a video to my dash cam footage that I'll upload sometime in the next week. There's also a lot of videos that I watched on the quality of this dash cam before I bought it, so you can also check those out on YouTube. I think that's all I have to say for this video, so if you guys enjoyed, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below and I'll try my best to answer them. I'm not a professional, so I always just tell you guys about my own experience, and if I can help you, then I'll definitely reply to your comment. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope you guys stick around for my next upload. Peace.